I don't think I was ever saw myself as an organizer against government. I saw myself as an organizer of people having a voice and having power. And so so the city of Seattle has started up a Department of Neighborhoods, and I thought, well, this could be a good opportunity. You know, what's the alternative to having government? You know, it plays totally into the right wing if you're just saying we want to get rid of government and government's the problem. So the idea became, how do we get government to start valuing active citizens, and how do we get active citizens to start valuing government? How do we make democracy work again? The mayor who hired me, the only interaction I'd had with him prior to that was when we'd picketed his house and when we released a live chicken in his office because he'd backed down on a campaign commitment. So I realized I'm probably not going to keep the job for very long if I just train people how to release chickens in the mayor's office, right? So the idea became, how do we create more of a partnership? How do we make democracy work again? How do we get government to see active citizens as a strength? And how do we get citizens to start seeing government as an extension of themselves? And so the idea became, rather than always looking to government to do it, part of it's about how do we hold government accountable to the community, but it's also what can communities do that they could add real value. So started doing programs like a neighborhood matching fund, where we provide a cash match from local government in exchange for the community's equal match of volunteer labor in support of community-initiated projects that government couldn't have afforded to do otherwise. And that was an incredible success. We've done over 5,000 projects over the past 25 years. People coming together to create community gardens, pocket parks, create public art, do oral histories, renovate facilities, build cultural centers, all kinds of fantastic projects. And in the process, I mean, the projects are really cool, but what's really great is the way it also brings people together. It builds that sense of community. And what I've come to realize over time is that there's lots of ways to build community. One way is to organize people around a crisis, around an issue. When I was organizing, you know, if there wasn't a big issue or there wasn't a big crisis, I didn't know quite how to bring people together. I was kind of depressed. It's kind of sick, you know. If there wasn't a crisis, I was depressed. And what I realized was there's lots of ways to bring people together. You know, you bring people together around social events. You bring people together around volunteer activities. You bring people together around projects. And in the process, people build relationships. And once people build relationships and build an organization, then they're better able to deal with those issues that are affecting the community. You don't have to yell so loud because you build a really broad base. I've got a friend who's a duck hunter, and my friend every duck will respond to a call. So there's one for the mallards and one for the loons. My friend says too oftentimes in our organizing, we just sound the loon call and wonder why only loons come out to our meetings. And the idea is everybody will come, we just need to find their call. And some people are uncomfortable with lots of meetings, with controversy. But most people care about their communities. They want to get engaged in some way. So giving people lots of opportunities, you know, social events, projects, all kinds of ways, and start to build those relationships. And the more calls you use, the broader participation you're going to get, you know, the deeper organization. So then when it comes time for the fight, you don't have to yell so loud because you got lots of people with you. One of the first projects that happened, they're in the Ballard neighborhood, which was the neighborhood of Seattle that had the least number of street trees of any neighborhood in Seattle at the time. They also had the least number of parks. And there was one woman there, Drevilla Gowan, she cared passionately about trees. She wanted to see trees up and down the streets. So she, you know, put notices in the church bulletin, in the corner grocery store, in the local paper, advertising for other people who shared her passion for street trees, right? And she tried to find somebody in every street. If nobody came forward, she'd go to that block and knock on every door just so she convinced somebody they shared her passion, right? She turned in all of her pledge forms with her matching fund application, and one day, over 1,008 trees came into the neighborhood. They delivered them and dropped them off in every block. Drevilla knocked on the door of the block captain knocked on the neighbors' doors. That day, over 1,000 people came out and planted trees up and down the streets. People felt incredibly empowered. You know, beginning of the day, there's no street trees. The end of the day, there's tree-lined streets. Well, they said, this is great. We still have the least number of parks. This group went on, and over the next 20 years, they built 20 parks, all with volunteers. You know, they built pocket parks and problem properties. They worked with the kids to build a skate park. They renaturalized natural areas. They're working to restore salmon estuary. They built ball fields. They built playgrounds. 20 parks in 20 years. And they said, well, this is great, but now we're concerned about what's happening to our planet. We're concerned about climate change. So they organized an all-volunteer group called Sustainable Ballard. And every summer for the past 10 years, they've had a Sustainable Ballard Fest. And they have music and food to bring people into one of the parks they built. And they have booths to educate neighbors about what they can do to reduce their carbon footprint. And one of the first booths you go to is an undriver's license station, where you check all the ways you will not drive over the next month. And when you do, you get a laminated undriver's license. It looks just like my official Washington State driver's license, right? And then when you get that, it tells you to drive the shuffle bus, which is like a Fred Flintstone mobile. You know, it's pedaled by feet. And it goes down the streets of Ballard, gets everybody's attention, gets people thinking, what could I do to get out of my car? What could I do to reduce my carbon footprint? So this now has created a movement. All the neighborhoods around Ballard have organized their own all-volunteer sustainability groups. All the suburban communities around Seattle have done the same. There are now 67 of these organizations, and collectively they call themselves Scallops, Sustainable Communities All Over Puget Sound. And it all started 20 years ago with your Villa Gowan and those street trees. So, you know, it's important to start small so people can see change, so they get a sense of their power, but you don't want to stay there. I do Facebook, you know, and I saw a great cartoon on Facebook where there's a couple guys sitting in the funeral parlor in front of this coffin, right? And then one turns to the other and says, I don't understand why more people aren't here. Yeah, it's 2,000 friends on Facebook. And like friends are only friends if they're going to show up for you, you know? So these virtual communities are kind of crazy to me. It's like, you know, they aren't going to be there for you in the earthquake. They aren't going to be there for you, you know? But I also have seen social media be an incredibly effective tool in helping reinforce personal connections. You know, we've lost a lot of our neighborhood newspapers, a lot because of social media. But in place of it, now we've got wikis, we've got all kinds of, you know, blogs where people in real time can get information about events coming up. So, you know, it's been an incredible tool for a lot of amazing organizing. But I think the organizing just a flash in the pan if it's not also built on personal relationships. And so I think you need both.